So I'm not the biggest fan of the Prince of Egypt. There are a couple of reasons why, even though my review was not the best of it. One of the reasons why is I'm not religious, and the fact the movie is just based off that entirely is why I didn't care for it that much, because the morals are belief and all this other crap, and yeah, while it has two really good songs, the rest of the songs are pretty forgettable. The animation is good, but not the best ever, and I think it's overhyped because people are like, I believe in this religion, so that for is good. And that's just how I feel about it. And of course, they decided to make a direct-to-DVD sequel of this movie for some reason. I don't know, making this movie in general is kind of weird, but let alone a direct-to-DVD sequel. And they decided to do so. Joseph, King of Dreams, is not that well known of a Bible story, at least compared to the other ones. At least in my opinion, I actually had no idea what this was even about. Then again, I haven't read the whole Bible. I always get lost at the Lot story, because that's just really weird stuff going on here. But anyway, this is the last section of the Genesis book, and right before Exodus. So it's technically a prequel to the Prince of Egypt, if you want to view it that way. Is the story historically accurate? No, it's just a made-up story that was based off a tribe, most likely, more than an actual person. Now, if you know anything about religion and Joseph, you probably think of the father Jesus over this guy, but if you're not Christian, you'll probably know this story more.
You would think this was your first try.
Greatness. And there's this guy named Jacob who was a jackass
when I was
in his
born?
life. He was like,
Well, yes and no.
he had a lot of
It was
sex, and
different
he had a
with your
bunch of
mother.
kids, basically.
But-
And one of these kids is Joseph, who's the youngest of all 12 brothers. Yeah, they all were boys. Yeah, that's kind of hard to believe. Not a single girl, huh? Whatever. He tells stories made up by that, just that alone. And for some reason, he likes this kid a lot and gives him this really ugly coat. That's what's making him look proud, and he doesn't do any work, and all his brothers kind of hate him. They especially hate his weird Van Gogh drawings that he has all the time, where it flickers out because the quality of this is just awful. Like, what is going on here? Eventually, they get tired of his ass and push him down a hole. Like, fuck you, dude, this is where you belong, bitch. They hate this guy, basically, and it's pretty natural why, because he's voiced by Ben Affleck. Yes, he's the only celebrity they got. Everyone else is a voice actor, basically. If they're famous voice actors, but they're not really noteworthy. And Ben Affleck does a really bad job. Everyone else does a good job. He does a bad job, and it sucks. He's the main character. And honestly, the beginning of the movie is kind of boring until his brothers like say, "Fuck you, we were gonna sell you into slavery." I'm not joking. That's a plot point. His brothers like, "We hate this guy so much. They're jumping over us with a bunch of sheep that we're gonna sell him to slavery." Also, he can't sing to save his life. The music in this movie isn't very good, and it will occasionally will have this problem where it'll just flicker and have like a seizure effect. So yeah, that's something that happens when you watch this movie, so keep that in mind. This might happen to you if you watch this movie. So this guy goes to Egypt because what else would he go to? There's the only place that people knew back in the day. Oh yeah, what's a famous civilization? Egypt! So let's write that in our book. And the most confusing thing is that according to Wikipedia, he was born in Turkey, and then, I don't think they moved, then he's all the way in Egypt all of a sudden. On foot, too, so they walk the whole way? The reason why I found that, it's not really that hard to imagine, because it's not that far, it might take like a week to walk there, I guess. But the fact that the Moses story comes next, they take like 50 years to find Israel, which is less of a distance between Egypt and there. So I'm very confused. He also lived in Egypt his whole life, and then he was buried in Palestine, according to where his tomb is. Like, huh? I don't get it. Like, seriously, how does he live near Egypt and then lives in Egypt most of his life, and then he dies, and then according to everything else, like, no, he was born in Turkey and died in Palestine, or was buried there. Like, huh? Those locations don't add up. I know they're not that far away, but at the same time, like, why are they so far apart in a world where they don't really have that good transportation? I don't really get it. Do you guys actually believe this shit? Like, seriously, his tomb is in current-day, modern-day Palestine, and on the West Bank, if you will. And yeah, it's kind of far away from Egypt. It's not that far, but at the same time, it's on foot. It is kind of far, so I don't get it. There's also this scene where they're shoving dicks up his ass, which is kind of weird. It's kind of uncomfortable, but you know, that's what happens in these movies. There's also this weird scene where the Pharaoh's wife wants to have sex with him. It's like, you're hot. He's like, no. And then she's like, well, I'm going to get you arrested. And it's like, oh, fuck. And then he gets arrested anyway because he's like, well, I don't want you around because my wife wants to fuck you. That's actually a plot point in this movie. And now he's thrown in jail with these weird-looking dudes. If you couldn't tell, this movie is not really a kid's movie. There's, like, barely anything that would entertain them. In fact, I don't think most kids would find this movie boring as fuck. I think it's a little more interesting than Prince of Egypt, narratively speaking, because we're seeing a character actually go through struggles rather than a character who has a great life and like, oh, I'm actually a slave, I guess, but not really, and just runs away and then he's like forced to come back by not even his own will to actually do something. That's kind of sucks, by the way. Moses just sucks ass. His whole motivation is that God tells him to do something. He doesn't go back to save his own people on his own free will. He doesn't because someone else tells him to do it. Someone else who probably should be able to do it in the first place. That's why I don't like Prince of Egypt, because the story makes no sense. At least here, there's very lack of anything, other than of like stupid religious shit. It's mostly just a story about a guy getting sold into slavery and him building himself back up and then fucking with his brothers in the end or some bullshit like that. I don't know. Why am I talking about this shit? Seriously, who's watching this review? Tell me below. Are you watching this review? Is the fat guy gonna die as a Farquaad haircut? Yes, he is. You see, he gets upset, Farquaad, who's fat now, because Joseph here can see the future in his dreams, and he interprets their dreams saying, "You're gonna die in 3 days, motherfucker." And the other guy's like, "I don't really care because I want to live," according to his dream. And I guess this is his power he has. It said that God gives him these gifts, but at the same time, it's not really given that much explanation. So that's why it's not as religious or a lot of bullshit as the Prince of Egypt did, because that's the only aspect that has anything to do with religion. Even though this is a story in 3 religious books, but whatever. Most Christians just skip this book entirely because I guess they think it's boring or something. They rather have a talk about a guy flooding the earth or some bullshit like that. I don't know. The fucking Bible, Torah, and Quran are full of a bunch of bullshit stories. I don't know how anybody believes in that shit. So Joseph cries for years as he grows a beard, I guess, and he just makes a tree, I guess, stationed. Yeah, that's a lot of this movie. Very entertaining for kids, I know. So Joseph actually gains a rank because the Pharaoh's like, "Yeah, I heard you can prophesize dreams." Like, "Yeah, I can. What about my dreams?" Like, "Oh, there's gonna be a fucking famine, so you better listen to me." He's like, "Okay, well, I'll listen to you." And he turns out he's right. So Joseph goes from fucking slave into a person who gets a bunch of second in command somehow. There's also really bad CGI here for some reason. The animation is okay for the most part, but it doesn't really do much. For some reason, there's really awkward looking CG for this one scene only. It's very awkward looking. It is kind of weird that one guy who was a slave for most of the time in Egypt is now in charge of pretty much everything, second in command. Like, he has all this power, and he's able to basically enslave more people, because why not? He's got married, he doesn't give a shit anymore. But, he helps out because he helps the famine that goes on, and he's like, we should keep some seeds from this famine might happen, and he's right, I guess, and, whatever. Who gives a shit? An hour in, Joseph, who is like a roller now, is like, he sees his old brothers who want like food or something during the famine. He's like, "Fuck you guys, arrest this motherfucker. If they don't do what I tell them to do, I'm gonna kill this guy." They're like, "Oh shit." And then, after they do what he wants them to do, he's like, "I'm gonna fuck with you guys even more. I'm gonna frame you guys for actually robbing me and see if you guys will sacrifice your new brother like you did to me." And they're like, "We're sorry, motherfucker. Can you forgive us?" He's like, "Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll forgive you." And that's the end of the story, And that's about it. Redemption. You would think this big plot point would take up more time, but it only takes up like 10 minutes compared to the rest of the movie, which is him fucking in jail and crying to sheep and having dreams, wet dreams, and yeah, that's it. That's where the movie ends. It's not where the story in the Bible ends, but then again, it's not really that interesting. And in case you're wondering, in the Bible, his dad dies and he cries like a bitch over him. His dad did stupid shit, so who gives a shit about him? In case you don't know anything about Joseph's dad, who was Jacob, Jacob was an asshole. So he had an older brother named Esau who screwed out all of his royalties just because he wanted his dad's blessing. His dad was dumb enough to give it to him because he was blind or something like that. So then he runs away, and then he basically works for a guy. He's like, "I want to have sex with your daughter," and then he gives him the wrong daughter. He fucks the wrong daughter. He's like, "I actually want to fuck this daughter," but then the one daughter keeps giving kids, and the other one doesn't. And he keeps fucking multiple women. He fucks 2 other his concubines too. Like, what the fuck? You're supposed to like this old fucker here? Fuck him. He's a jackass. Not only that, but he doesn't even give a shit the fact that he prioritizes his one son over these others, and that makes him sell that one son into slavery. So Jacob can go fuck himself, or Israel, if you will. That's one of his other names. Fuck Jacob. He's a jackass. I don't give a shit about him. He deserves to go to hell. Hell is forever, whether you like it or not. Overall, Joseph King Dreams is not for me, but it's not bad. If you like any of this crap or believe in this shit, this might be a good interpretation for you. I don't recommend kids watching this movie because I would find it pretty boring. I don't know, if I was a kid, I'd be like, ugh. It just reminded me of watching shit in Sunday school. Hated going to church. Sorry, I'm anti-religion, so sorry. I do find it interesting to research it, and I did learn quite a bit by actually looking into the other stuff about this character and the mythology behind it. And overall, there isn't terrible morals in it, unlike Prince of Egypt. The moral is basically forgiveness, which works a lot better than just saying believe. Blind belief doesn't mean anything. So yeah, there's nothing like weird shit like a god murdering everybody because he's bad at freeing his own people, like in Prince of Egypt or some bullshit like that. Overall, it's if you're into it, you might like it. The music sucks. There is a couple music numbers, but they're more like in the background more than actual in the movie. Joseph has a bad voice actor. Ben Affleck, I don't think he's good in anything to be honest. So let alone being a voice actor. It was their only attempt at making a direct-to-DVD sequel in the year 2000, the year of my birth. And yeah, other than that, they decided to not do it. You might say, oh, that might be good on their part. Well, they made a bunch of sequels that feel like direct-to-DVD sequels. You can't tell me that Spirit Untamed was not a direct-to-DVD sequel. And even like the Orion movie came out on direct-to-streaming. They're also making a Megamind sequel movie that's direct-to-DVD quality. Uh, yeah, I guess I gotta talk about that when that comes out. Everyone's been just non-stop talking about it. Of course, it's like, oh, wow, I can't believe they're making a sequel, and then just to make it look as terrible as possible. But either way, Joseph King of Dreams, I don't think you'll be dreaming about this movie anytime soon, and I'll honestly probably forget about it. But hey, there you go.